Hello and welcome back to my Astro Imaging Journey channel. Just another video on the Stellarium Custom Landscape. As we remember from the last episode, the cell phone panoramic I took, the Mary point just did not match up, and it just didn't look that great, and that would definitely cause issues with trying to select targets if they're close to the treetops. So what I did was I went back out there this time with my DSLR, my T7i from Canon. Put the 10mm fisheye lens on it and took a series of pictures and stitched them together, which we will go through here shortly. But as you can see, we have a much better image to work with now. As we can see over here, we've got my little burn pit and this tree trunk here. They get cut off over here, and that continues on over here. So that looks a lot better. It is a spherical match panoramic, so it kind of looks like it undulates here, like a little waveform, a little sine wave. But if we go over to Stellarium, and things look a little bit better. For example, we don't have the curving in the roof line that you see here. So when it displays, it looks much better. And you can see right here is that Mary line, and where the two ends of the images or the image come together or marry together, and looks pretty good there. So we will go through and look, and we'll go and hopefully get this processed again and looking like this once more. First off, let's take a look at my original photos. Let me minimize Stellarium. So there's the stitched panoramic, and if we just take a quick look at the images, as you can see, I had it on my tripod and I just rotated the head of the tripod around. And took a series of pictures, and they look a little dark, but we can pull that that info up, or the colors up. So let's open up Lightroom. Okay, now with Lightroom open, we'll want to go to Library, Import, and we're going to want to search for those files. And we don't need this panoramic here. We just want the original raw files from the camera. Click Import. Just make sure they all have check marks. And once they are all done importing, we're going to go over to Develop. And I'm going to choose one of the ones in the middle. So let's go with this one right here, or this one. I'm going to choose this one. And if we look at our histogram, we got a lot down here in the blacks. So let's, we're just going to make adjustments to this one image. And the first thing I want to do, because that was a fisheye lens, is I want to come down here to lens correction. I want to enable profile correction and remove chromatic aberration. And as you saw, it flattened that field a little bit. You can see how it distorted here in the corners. Also brought up the tones a little bit, which we can see here in the histogram. And then I just want to play, just want to bring these together a little bit. Bring these highlights down. I just want to pull them off the edges a little bit. Texture. And we're just trying to get a little bit better on our image, get things more in the center. We're not doing any stock photography. It doesn't have to look great. Don't need any of that, so that should be good there. And one thing to remember when we're looking at, let's go to this image here. If you're going to do this, try to have no clouds in the sky. Preferably midday, or I did this right as the sun was setting. We can see that in this, the sun was right back over here to the west. It had just gone below this little ridge back here. So the sky was pretty consistent as far as no clouds and a very similar tone, which will be key here in a little bit. So we're going to select our image we just edited. Now we're going to, on Windows, Shift, and click the first one. We have a little sync button over here, so we're just going to go ahead and sync. Leave all these check marked, and you can see everything pasted pretty well. They all lightened up, so we're just going to click away, and we're going to select the one we edited at first again. Shift and click the last image, and then do our sync again. And they're all good now. So we click away and we select all. And at this point, we will right click on any of them with all of them selected. Now we can do an edit in, merge to panorama in Photoshop. When I tested this yesterday, it was a little bit more difficult to work with, and the stitching didn't do so well. Maybe if I had used some different settings, it would have worked, but if that's what you're familiar with, by all means, go ahead and use that. What worked for me was to go to Photo Merge here, and then Panorama. We'll wait for the preview to finish, and that looks pretty good. Looks pretty identical to the one we already had. I did an auto crop, I believe, but I'm going to not do that this time. Nah, I'm going to go ahead and do an auto crop. Boundary wrap of 3, nope. That brought it in, we don't want that. spherical. The rest of these, so if we go to cylindrical, it made it tall and exaggerated that warp, but spherical worked pretty well, and I'm not going to demonstrate perspective, but spherical worked for us. So we're just going to go ahead and do a merge. And you can see up here, it's creating the panorama. We'll be back when that finishes. All right, that has completed, and as you can see, it created a new image down here. So we're just going to go ahead and select that image. Now, the one thing that I did not do was revisit and do the treetops again. As you can see, this one gets cut off. It's not that huge of a deal, but it is what it is. I do plan on redoing this image once all the leaves are filled out in the trees. But for now, it does make a nice effect, which we'll look at later. But what we're going to do with this image, now that it's done, is we're going to come down here, right click on it, and do an export. Export specific folder. I'm going to rename this to Redux. And where's my, so let's do a resolution of 300. And I'm not going to resize to fit. I want to leave that. When I did it yesterday, I did the resize to fit. This is a default thing for other images I do, and the resolution wasn't the greatest, so we're just gonna leave that be. JPEG 100% quality, and we're going to go ahead and export. So we will wait until this finishes, and that has finished. So we can actually go ahead and, before I exit Lightroom, I always like to just go ahead and remove the photos. Don't delete from disk, just do a remove. It removes them from the library. I have had issues, little tip here, I have had issues where if there are photos in here, then I have to remove them, and if I try to go to the library and do a new import, sometimes it hangs right here, and it can take a little bit for this to be able to do a new import and all that good stuff. So I usually leave it on the develop tab and remove the photos from the bottom, and then close out of Lightroom. That's what I do. Whatever works for you. That's, do whatever works for you. So now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to open up Photoshop. All right, now with Photoshop open, I'm going to come down here to create new, and as you saw, we had our custom template or custom canvas that we worked with yesterday. We could always change this if we wanted, but these are the settings that were recommended, so that's what we're going to go with. We're going to do a create. Those settings are 4096 by 2048 pixels with a resolution of 300, RGB color in the color mode, transparent background, and that should be everything that I had to change. Orientation landscape, by the way. So let's go ahead and do a create. Now we're going to come back over here. There's our, it should have been, there it is. So we're going to come down here. We're just going to drag it onto our canvas. It auto resizes it to the width of the canvas. This is the approximate midpoint right here, which would be our horizon. And I just moved that, so hopefully this doesn't mess it up too bad. And our horizon is about where, you know, the road actually moves up. It's not just the distortion in the image, it does move up. So I want the midpoint to be about right below this road line. I'm just going to move it up to about right there. That works for me. And again, this is my workflow. Whatever works for you, please do it. But for me, I select the little marker tool, click off to deselect our image. Then we're going to come down here to our rectangle tool. I like to use black. And then we just come down here and make sure we're somewhere near the bottom without cutting too much of it off. Click away, and that looks good. And as you can see, it didn't change the canvas size or anything, even though I was off the canvas. It's just going to limit that to the canvas itself. So now I'm going to select my image, and we're going to come back up here to select color range and make sure we're on our spot eyedropper. And this is where it's nice if the sky doesn't have clouds or anything like that. We're going to bring that fuzziness down to about somewhere in the 30s. As you can see the preview here, we're just going to select something that gets us most of the sky. Yeah, that works. It gets us most of the sky around the trees, this highlighted area. And we're going to do an add to sample on the dropper, and then we're going to select other points. That we shouldn't need too many points. That should be good right in there. Yeah. So we needed a highlighted point, a midpoint, and a dark point. That looks pretty good, and then we'll just do a little fuzziness to a little bit right about in there. And we're just going to, that just helps bring, if we bring that down all the way, as you can see, we get some points up here, and we could, pick that point and add it and go that route, or we could just do our little fuzziness and make sure most of the sky is nice and masked out. Bring that back up a little bit more, and we'll click OK. And we have our mask. So at this point, I like to zoom in. And So start at one side and work our way around. So as you can see, we've got a couple little spots that got more masked out in the tree trunks, the debris, the rake handle, things like that. So I'm going to come up here to our marquee tool, and all we're going to do, make sure we have the subtract from selection, and I'm just going to mark out these little extra areas that aren't needed, and just looking if you, hopefully it shows up in the video, but you can see how the lines kind of look like waves. They move a little bit, so it makes it real easy to determine. As you can see in my Suburban here, it found some areas in there, so we're just going to go ahead and get those done. Get the stuff in the yard. And move over towards the house. Just go ahead and get the chimney. And there are other ways of doing this, using the lasso tool and everything else, but this is probably the easiest way I've found to do this for me. So this is what I'm using. We'll select all of that and all of that because it got some of the gravel. And let's see here. Caught a little bit over there. And the hunting blind will just take little sections out here. And that looks good right there. Little spot over there. Mailbox. And we'll just go ahead and get all of that. And that should do us. So now we will fit back to screen, and it looks pretty good. So the sky is what should be masked out now. So now we're going to come down here to this little button, add layer mask. And as you can see, it cut everything but the sky out. So in Windows, it's Control I. That inverts it. And that should be good. So now we're just going to go over here, do a save as. Change this to a PNG. There's PNG. There's PNG. And I have that in my Ryan home. That's that directory I created before. So we're just going to go ahead and overwrite the file. Yes. Large size. And at this point, we can go ahead and close this out. There's no reason to keep it. And if I go to my desktop, where I am home, there's the home file. So next thing I'm going to want to do, come down here, open a new window, see program files, Stellarium, and landscapes. So we already have this one from yesterday. I want to copy this landscape.ini file. We already have everything named, and what is key here is this angle of rotate. I'm going to set this to 0. Actually, I'm just going to do a 1. Save it. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to close out of Stellarium. And let's go ahead and copy and paste. So we're copying our temporary folders or files and pasting them into the landscape directory that we created over here. And the problem here is we can read this file, but if we make an edit to it and we try to save it, it won't let us. So if we do a 10, we save, and now it's letting me save. Yesterday it would not let me save because these are read-only. They're supposed to be read-only, but that's okay. So now let's open up Stellarium again. Alright, so Stellarium's opened up. Now I know this is not east. Polaris should be sitting right up here, and which would make this north, not west. So that tells us we need to move this, we need to rotate this image around. So let me get over to this one here, and I'm going to close out of Stellarium. Let me open this back up, change this to 90, and save. Make sure that, oh, yep, that did save. So we're going to open up Stellarium again. All right, now that Stellarium's opened back up, let's take a look. So this is our north. So let me get the lines in there. All right, so now as we can see here, north is right off of this tree. So Polaris should be right up in here. So let's actually let's go back in time. Went too fast. So last night, there's our tree, there's Polaris. That looks pretty darn close. And I know the moon was coming up right over here. So let's fast forward. And there's our moon coming up behind the trees, and that looks about right for last night. which is awesome. So now, I mean, it makes a nice little cool effect being able to see things go behind the trees and all that. But I'll redo this when the leaves are on the trees and it gets more blacked out. But let me go back to the current date or the current time. What is that keyboard shortcut? Okay, so keyboard shortcut is an 8. Looks pretty good. I just have to keep in mind that anything that would be coming into this tree right here, I'm going to have to be mindful of until I do redo these images when the leaves are on, but that all worked out pretty good. I mean, clearly kept a little bit of the sky right in here when I did my mask, but that's all right. Did a pretty decent job. So we will, yeah, I like that. So let's watch the sun go across. That's about right. Sets right over in this area. Yep, that looks about right. And our stitch line here, our Mary line, looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit off, but that's livable. I won't be trying to do a target, so let's say M81. And so if it was middle of the day right now, or middle of the night, and I'd be looking at this target, I would not be trying to play with, oh, it's just coming from behind the trees, my field of view is good, and so take a note of the timestamp and everything, and then go until the end of the night and say, oh, there we go. We're just coming into the trees here, so let's look at the timestamp on that. I'm clearly not going to get that close, but it gives us a good idea that should be, right in there. We should be good to go. Mark that timestamp as our end time, and everything would hopefully work for us, and we wouldn't exit the trees or be interfered with by the trees. So 8. Let's go back to the current date and time. So yeah, that is in a nutshell how we can create a custom landscape for Stellarium, help us better visualize where things are going to be coming up, roughly what our time frame is going to be as far as when something's going to be coming behind the trees, give us a little bit of time to get out of there, and then when is it going to go behind the trees, and give us a little bit of a lead time on that to make sure there's no interference. Could I have gone out there and did what I did previously, mark the top of this tree, then this little valley, then the top here, this valley, the top here, and get all of those points, and as far as elevation angle and the degrees as far as 360, 0 being up here, and created what we had before, which if we come over here at home, which is what we had before, and as you can see, things have changed. So like here's our southeast. This is where those trees that I cut out. As you can see, it opened a nice little segment right in here. So I'm going to have to play and make sure that things are lined up as they should be, but looks pretty darn close. You know, when I did this, I did to the top of this tree, and then to the top of that tree, and so looks pretty close. But as you know, maybe that's 10-15 minutes of extra time I could have had on a target that was rising right in here that I wouldn't have started until it was right in here. And then this opens up to get some data on some targets as well. So yeah, I like it. The only other thing we got to do is there we go. So if you notice, this was what I had here. You have this little checkbox here, use this landscape as default. If I check that one, you see I now have this as the default, so when Stellarium opens up, this is what will be displayed. And again, if I needed to make any adjustments as far as the rotation of where this image is, if Polaris was supposed to be right above this tree and not off to the side, then I would be going back into that file here and adjusting this to say 89 or 88 and make small little adjustments until I get that point where I need it to be. So with that, I hope you found this informative. I hope this works really well for me going forward. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. As always, clear skies. Please stick around for the outro. Keep yourself safe and healthy in these trying times that we are right now. And as always, have a good one. See you later.
Thanks for watching yet another episode from the Astro Ninja Journey channel. Really appreciate your viewership. In our upper right, we have the latest video that I have posted prior to this one. Down in the lower right, we have what YouTube thinks you will enjoy. Below is a subscription link. Please hit that like button, subscribe if you so choose, ring that bell if you want to get notified of something new, and as always, thank you, clear skies. Remember to